You're watching Forsaken Joe. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy the story. Let's begin. The morning was like any other. Black coffee, no frills, just how I liked it. The steam rose from the mug, and I let the bitter taste settle in my mouth, my fingers wrapped around the warmth. I didn't need anything else right then. Then the phone buzzed. A quick glance. It was Ava. Need space in Maui with my boss. Don't wait up. I didn't feel anger or shock. It was just a click inside, like a gear shifting. A realization that I'd been waiting for this day for years, though I never said it out loud, never let it show. I'd been preparing for this, quietly, while she drifted further away. I stared at the message, but I didn't respond, not right away. Instead, I walked to the drawer where I kept it, my in case of emergency folder, pulled it out like it was nothing. Inside, a checklist, everything I needed to do when this day arrived. I started moving through it methodically, like I'd done in my head 100 times. First things first, check the house. Next, lawyer's number. Then, transfer funds, make sure they're secure. This wasn't a decision, it was just the next step. I pulled up the lawyer's number first. David answered after 2 rings. Jason, what's going on? He sounded like he already knew. I need the paperwork ready, I said. I want the house in my name, and I need to sell it. Fast. Got it, he replied without hesitation. I'll make sure everything's lined up. You want to meet today? No need? Just handle it. I hung up. Next, I called the realtor. I barely had to explain anything before they said they could get the house listed by the end of the day. No drama, no delays. I'd spent enough time in this house to know what it was worth and what it wasn't. Ava hadn't cared about it for years. She hadn't cared about a lot of things for years. While I was on the phone, I opened the app for my mutual funds. Ava had no clue how much was in there, or even where the accounts were. That was on purpose. She'd never been interested in the details. So I transferred what I needed into a new account, one that was just mine, one that she couldn't touch. I sat back for a second and let it sink in. It felt like I'd spent so much time preparing for this, in the background, while she went about her life. There was a time, though, when it wasn't like that, when we used to do things together. The little things. Like that trip to the grocery store when we first moved in together. I remember Ava laughing as she pushed the cart. She used to find joy in the simplest shit. I didn't even know when it started to shift, when her laughter started feeling more like a mask than something real. Maybe it was gradual, like the days piling up, one after the other. Maybe I'd stopped seeing her, stopped hearing her. I wasn't sure, but somewhere in the middle of it all, I distanced myself emotionally. I had to. There was a time when I would have been heartbroken by a message like the one she sent this morning. But now, it didn't sting. It was just the next step. I closed the app and sat in the silence. The house was empty, but I wasn't about to let myself feel it. Not yet. There was still work to do. The next buzz came from my phone. I didn't need to check the name. I already knew. It was Ava. A video. I clicked it. She was in a pool, water splashing around her as she laughed. I didn't have to look too closely to see who she was with. Her boss. The same guy I'd seen in a few of her emails over the past year. The one she always defended when I asked about him. They were laughing together, her head tipped back as he kissed her. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't even something that I needed to process. It was just confirmation of what I already knew. I watched it all the way through, not out of anger or hurt, but because it made sense. She wasn't trying to hide it anymore. She didn't need to. I swiped the video away, closed the app. The list was getting shorter. The house was on its way to being sold. The money was secure. I didn't feel a thing about any of it, but the weight of the steps I'd taken settled over me in a way that felt right. I wasn't looking back. I wasn't waiting anymore. I grabbed the folder again. Next on the list, get ready to move forward. I drove to David's office after making sure everything else was in motion. I didn't need to prepare for the meeting. I'd been living in a constant state of preparation for years. This was just the next step. David's office smelled like leather and coffee. I wasn't here for small talk. He was already seated, waiting, a file open in front of him. Jason, he said, nodding toward the chair across from him. Let's get this done. I sat down and glanced at the papers spread out before me. The house was officially in my name now. I signed the first sheet without hesitation. No arguments, no questions, just the sound of my pen marking the paper. It was a quiet action, but it felt significant in its own way. David didn't push any papers toward me after that. He just let me sign. "Everything's in place for the sale?" I asked, my voice a little rough, but it wasn't a question that needed asking. He nodded. "No issues. It'll be listed within the next few hours. Offers will come in fast." I signed another form and then another. There were a few more checks, a handful of decisions to make about accounts, but nothing felt like a big deal. Nothing felt heavy. Just final. David glanced up at me as I signed the last page. He'd been quiet throughout, but I could feel him looking for something. Maybe a reaction, maybe a crack. He cleared his throat. "You're quiet today, Jason. You sure you're okay?" I looked at him. "I'm fine," I said, not offering any more. He didn't press. He knew better. He shuffled the papers back into the folder and slid it across the table to me. "You're sure this is what you want?" I didn't answer right away. I could have told him how long I'd been waiting for this, how much time I'd spent mentally preparing, but I didn't need to explain, not to him, not to anyone. I stood up and tucked the folder under my arm. "I'm sure." David didn't say anything else, just nodded as I walked out. There was no fanfare, no deep conversation, just a brief handshake and a quiet exit. When I stepped out into the parking lot, the air felt different. Not lighter exactly, but the weight was shifting, like the air pressure had changed just enough to notice. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel relief. There was nothing to feel other than the certainty that I had done what needed to be done, that this was the right decision, and that it was happening whether I felt anything about it or not. I thought back to the morning, to how I had methodically moved through each step. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped expecting a crisis or a breakdown. There was no explosion, no big argument. Just a slow, steady realization that the life I thought I was going to have was no longer the life I was living. And in that quiet, steady place, I was okay. More than okay. I was moving forward. I made my way back to the car, feeling the pull of the next step waiting for me. The house would sell. The assets would transfer. The past would fade. It wasn't just the right decision, it was the only one left. I sat down at the kitchen table, my phone still in my hand. The silence in the room felt like it was closing in on me, but I didn't mind. The next buzz came, a notification from Ava. Another video. I didn't hesitate to open it. This time, she was standing with her boss, the same guy from the pool video, but now they were in a different setting. Sunset in the background, glasses raised in a toast, a quiet celebration. The way they looked at each other, it wasn't subtle. There was no mistaking it. This was her new reality, and she wasn't hiding it anymore. I watched it to the end. No anger, no shock, just acceptance, the inevitable. I had known deep down that this was coming. It wasn't a betrayal anymore. It wasn't anything. Just the natural consequence of a relationship that had been slowly dying for years. I turned the phone off and put it down on the table, then pulled the laptop closer. I went through the motions, opening the bank accounts and transferring more assets into my new account. No rush, no emotional weight behind it. Just another thing that needed to be done. Ava hadn't bothered to keep track of the finances in years. She'd long since stopped caring about the details, and now neither did I. The thought of checking my phone for more updates from her didn't cross my mind. I didn't care to see more videos, didn't need to know what she was doing, who she was with. She could send me all the updates she wanted. I was already done. When everything was transferred, I closed the laptop and stood up, feeling the weight of my decision settle in. There was no relief, no rush of triumph, just a quiet certainty. Ava hadn't realized yet that I'd moved on emotionally. I hadn't needed closure from her, and I didn't need her to understand. I'd been waiting for this day, this shift in how I felt, and now I knew I was done. Quietly, decisively done. I went to the desk and pulled out the folder again, checking my list. The house was almost gone. The money was secure, but there was still one last thing to do. I pulled up a browser tab and searched for flights. One-way ticket to Lisbon. I didn't hesitate. I booked it. A small part of me thought about telling Maya, but I didn't. She'd know when she needed to know. Right now, it felt like I was the only one who understood the shift. Ava, still on her vacation, still chasing whatever it was she was chasing. She wasn't there yet. She didn't see that the chapter had ended, but I had. I was already moving forward. I picked up my phone one last time and silenced the notifications. I had no interest in hearing from Ava, not anymore. I didn't need her messages, her explanations, or her manipulations. I was already packing up the parts of my life that still mattered. My future, my freedom, and leaving behind the rest. The door was closing on my old life, for good this time. I called the moving company as soon as I booked my flight to Lisbon. I didn't want to deal with this later. I needed it done, cleanly, with no mess. They showed up the next day right on time, a couple of guys I'd never met before, rolling up their sleeves like this was just another job. I was fine with that. The less fuss, the better. "We'll take care of everything," one of them said, looking around at the house. I nodded. Just her stuff. Nothing of mine. They went straight to work, carrying boxes, lifting furniture, wrapping up her things in blankets. I wasn't in a rush to leave, but I wasn't going to hang around either. I went from room to room, checking things off in my head, making sure everything was moving in the right direction. I didn't need to watch them the whole time. I wasn't doing this for her. I was doing it for me. I was doing it so I could finally close the door on this chapter without any more attachments, no more loose ends. They moved through the house like it was just another job. Clothes, shoes, books, pictures, trinkets. They packed it all. It hit me, watching them take it all away, how little any of it mattered now. All those little things she'd held onto, like the framed photos of us on the beach, the decorative vase we bought when we first moved in. They didn't mean anything anymore. They were just things, meaningless without the context they once had. I found a photo of us, tucked away on the mantelpiece in the living room. It was from a trip we took to the mountains, back when we still thought everything would work out. Ava's smile in that picture, genuine, carefree, like the woman I used to know, stared back at me. For a second I almost held onto it, but I didn't. I set it down on the counter and walked away. It was a different life, a different time. As I moved through the house, I checked off the final few items. Nothing big, just the little details. Make sure the utilities are set, cancel the cable, remove her name from the accounts. That was all that was left to do. The movers were finishing up, taking the last of her things out to the truck. The house was empty now. No more clutter, no more reminders of what we used to be. I didn't feel anything looking around at the empty rooms. No sadness, no regret, no anger. Just a sense of resolution. The space felt lighter, but not in a way that mattered. It was just another step forward. I had nothing left to hold on to here, and that was fine. I walked to the front door, the last time I'd be here. I paused for a moment, letting the silence settle around me. Then I opened it, stepped outside, and closed it behind me. The sound of the door clicking shut felt final. There was no turning back now. I'd crossed the line. The car was already packed, the movers on their way. I had a ticket to catch. The life I had in this house, gone. The life I was going to build, waiting for me. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't look back. The phone buzzed in my pocket as I was sitting at the bar in the airport, waiting for my flight. I didn't look at it right away. I knew exactly who it was. Ava. I had seen her name flash up earlier, but this time, I just let it ring. I took a slow sip of my beer and let the noise of the airport settle in around me. It wasn't about avoiding the call. It was about not letting her pull me back into her world, not letting her disrupt the calm I'd fought so hard to find. I finished my drink before I decided to pick up. "Jason, where are you?" Her voice was tight, frantic. "Why haven't you been answering? What's going on?" I leaned back in my chair, giving the phone my full attention now. "I'm at the airport." A pause. Then she snapped, "The airport? What do you mean? Where are you going? Jason, you need to talk to me. You can't just shut me out like this." I exhaled slowly, not feeling the urge to argue. "I'm done, Ava." There was a crack in her voice. "What? What do you mean done? You can't just leave me like this. You can't just walk away. This isn't how it's supposed to be." I let her words hang in the air. I wasn't going to explain myself. I wasn't going to rehash any of this. "I've already bought a ticket to Lisbon," I said, my voice steady even. "I'm done with this chapter." The line went quiet for a second, and then she let loose. "You're abandoning me, Jason. You're just leaving me here. After everything we've been through, how could you do this? How could you just walk away without a word?" I felt the familiar pull of guilt trying to creep in, but I shut it down before it could take hold. This wasn't about her anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. "I'm not abandoning you, Ava," I said, my tone calm but firm. "I'm just removing myself from your chaos. You're not my responsibility anymore." The silence that followed was heavy. She was looking for a crack, some hint of weakness she could latch onto, but I wasn't going to give her one. I wasn't going to apologize or get sucked into her guilt trip. She spoke again, quieter this time. "You think I'm the problem, don't you? After everything we've been through, you think I'm the one who's been messing things up. I didn't answer right away. There was nothing left to say. I don't think you're the problem, I finally said, my voice steady. But I'm not the solution either. Another pause. I knew she was trying to process what I was saying, trying to figure out how to keep me in her orbit. But it wasn't going to work. Not anymore. I'm sorry, I added, even though I wasn't. I really am, but I'm done. Before she could respond, I ended the call. I set the phone down on the bar, feeling the finality of the action settle into my chest. There was no drama, no explosion of emotions, just the calm certainty that this was the right decision. I had moved on long before she realized it, and now it was time to step into the future. The boarding announcement for my flight came over the loudspeaker, and I stood up, grabbed my bag, and walked toward the gate. The plane waiting for me wasn't just a way out of the country. It was a way out of everything I'd been stuck in. I felt lighter with every step. As I boarded the plane, I didn't look back. Not at the airport, not at the life I was leaving behind. I was done. This was the beginning of something new, and I was ready for it. The plane touched down in Lisbon, and I felt the weight of everything I'd left behind fall away. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't holding my breath. I wasn't waiting for anything to happen. I was just here, and it felt like a relief. I stepped off the plane, into the cool air, and immediately felt the difference. The city had a buzz to it, something I hadn't realized I was missing. The sounds, the mix of languages, the pace of life. It was all new, but it felt like the right kind of new. No expectations, no old patterns to fall into. Just space. I checked my phone. No messages from Ava. Not that I was surprised. I didn't care about any of it anymore. It wasn't my problem. Eduardo, an old colleague from my days working overseas, had reached out a few weeks back. He'd heard I was coming to Lisbon and offered to help. "I've got an apartment for you," he'd said. "It's small, but it's perfect for someone who wants to settle in without the hassle." I hadn't expected much, but the apartment he'd arranged for me was everything I needed. Simple, clean, quiet. A small space with a view of the narrow streets and the old buildings that seemed to curve with the city's heartbeat. Nothing fancy, nothing overwhelming. Just a place to breathe, to reset. I dropped my bag on the floor and took a moment to take it all in. I was alone in this space, but it didn't feel empty. It felt like a blank slate. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like exactly what I needed. After I unpacked, I stepped out into the street. I didn't have a plan, didn't know where I was going, but that was the point. I didn't need a plan. I walked aimlessly, letting the city pull me in. Lisbon was alive in a way that felt gentle. The cobblestone streets winding up and down, the cafes spilling out onto the sidewalks, the smell of fresh bread and coffee in the air. I passed people going about their days, locals, tourists, families, and felt none of the pressure I used to feel, none of the weight of keeping up, of being something I wasn't. I stopped at a small cafe, a place with just a few tables outside. I ordered coffee in broken Portuguese, smiling awkwardly at the barista. She didn't mind. I sat down at a table by the window, watching the world move by. I took a sip of the coffee, the taste rich and strong. This was my life now. No more second-guessing, no more walking on eggshells, no more trying to understand someone else's emotional chaos. I wasn't playing anyone else's game anymore. I was living for me. It was funny, but I hadn't expected it to feel so right. I hadn't expected peace to settle in so easily. I was far from home, in a city that didn't care who I was or what my past was. And that was exactly what I needed. I sat there for a while, just watching, just being. I didn't look at my phone, didn't feel the need to check for messages or updates. I hadn't heard from Ava, and I didn't expect to. At this point, it didn't matter. She could try to reach me, but I wasn't going back. I wasn't going to get pulled into the same old dance. Instead, I sat there, letting the coffee warm my hands, and felt something close to contentment settle in my chest. It wasn't joy, but it was something like it. Something simple. Something real. For the first time in years, I was free. It had been a few weeks since I'd settled into Lisbon, and life was moving along at its own pace. I was slowly finding my rhythm, working, exploring the city, meeting new people. But there were still moments when something would break through, a reminder that my past wasn't completely gone yet. One afternoon, I was sitting in a small cafe near the apartment when I checked my phone. There was a notification from Instagram, an update from Ava. She posted a picture of herself and her boss on vacation, sitting together at a beachside table, glasses raised in a toast. The setting was perfect. Sunset, soft light, the kind of moment people wanted to show off. But it wasn't the photo that caught my attention. It was the bracelet on her wrist, the one I had bought her in Paris years ago, her favorite piece of jewelry. The one she had worn every day without fail, until she stopped caring about anything we had shared. I didn't feel anything when I saw it. No anger, no hurt. Just a quiet recognition that Ava was still trying to control the narrative. Still trying to present the perfect image. The one she wanted me to see. The one she wanted the world to see. I sent the photo to Maya. No message, just the image. I didn't need to say anything. Maya would get it. She responded quickly, her text simple. I saw that. Not surprised, I sat back and stared at the screen for a minute, wondering if Maya was okay. I didn't know if she was handling it all like I was, or if she was still holding on to whatever version of Ava she had left in her mind. Ava's callousness, her manipulation, had been like a slow poison in our family for years, but I wasn't sure where Maya stood now. I hadn't asked. She was an adult after all, and I knew better than to push her into a conversation she wasn't ready for. Ava called again, not long after. The number came up on my screen, and I didn't bother answering. I knew what she wanted. She probably thought I'd pick up, that I'd want to fight or explain myself. But I wasn't interested in fighting, not anymore. I let the phone ring until it stopped, and then I turned it over on the table. I wasn't even tempted to check the voicemail. I looked up from my phone and watched the people around me. A couple sat by the window, speaking softly to each other in Portuguese. A mother with her child laughed as they shared a pastry. The world was moving around me, and none of it had anything to do with Ava anymore. I was done. That night, Maya and I talked. We had a quiet dinner at the apartment, just the two of us. The conversation wasn't heavy, just light, but there was an undercurrent there. We both knew it was a new chapter in our lives, one that didn't have to involve Ava's chaos. Maya stirred her coffee and looked up at me. I've been thinking, she said, her voice tentative. I get why you did it. I get why you're done with her. I nodded, not saying anything at first. You don't have to get it. You just have to be okay. She smiled a little, but there was something in her eyes. Maybe a little relief, maybe a little sadness. I wasn't sure. I'm okay. I didn't know if you were. I let that sink in for a moment. I wasn't sure if I was okay either, but I knew I was in a better place than I had been in years. I am, I said quietly. I really am. We sat there for a while, just drinking our coffee, watching the evening light change outside. It felt like the first time in ages I didn't have to carry the weight of someone else's decisions. For once, I was free. Ava might still be trying to control things from a distance, still playing her games, but I wasn't playing anymore. I didn't need her apologies or her excuses. I had my own life now, and that was enough. The letter came in the mail, a thick envelope with official-looking seals and the kind of weight that felt like a finality. I sat at the kitchen table and opened it, knowing exactly what it was before I even pulled out the papers. It was from Ava's lawyer, detailing the financial separation and the transfer of assets. It was clean, neat. There was nothing surprising about it, but then, at the bottom of the last page, I saw her note. Her handwriting, familiar in a way that almost felt foreign now. You said you needed space. I gave you the whole house's worth of it. I read the line twice, not out of disbelief, but because it was exactly what I expected. A final jab, a way for her to try and make herself the victim, even in the end. But it didn't matter. Not anymore. I folded the letter in half, set it down on the table, and pushed it aside. There was no response needed, no emotional reaction required. She still didn't get it. She still didn't understand why I was gone, or why I'd left. But that was the point, wasn't it? I was done explaining myself to her. Done explaining to anyone. I'd moved on long before she figured it out. And now, I was done with the past. Completely done. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of freedom, not just from her, but from the life I had once thought I had to live. The life I thought was my only option, the one I kept trying to hold together, trying to force into something it could never be. I'd spent so many years trying to make sense of the chaos, trying to find the right way to fix things. But I didn't have to fix anything anymore. I didn't have to keep living in that cycle. I looked at the letter again, but this time, it didn't mean anything. Just words on a page from someone I'd left behind. I knew she'd never understand what I'd done or why, and I didn't need her to. I picked the letter up and slipped it into the drawer with the rest of the things I'd packed away from my past. It was just one more step, one more symbol of the life I was leaving behind. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city of Lisbon. It felt like a blank slate. A future I could finally own. A life that wasn't dictated by anyone else's rules. For the first time in ages, I could breathe. I had no idea what was next, but for the first time, that didn't scare me. The future was mine now.